Hey, 8th graders, Thursday, April 2nd. Quick little video today. Tomorrow we have a Zoomcast. We will meet together, and I want to make sure we all know how to get our next book, Antony and Cleopatra. I gave you an email about it, but just to remind you, you can go to school and pick it up in the foyer from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. this week, or by appointment with me. I've also given you links to where you can read it online, so you can have the text online. A couple different places. There's No Fear Shakespeare, which is a good resource that has the original plus the translation, so you can see both at the same time and kind of go back and forth if you're getting confused. You can find lots of online text of the original by itself, too. I've given you the audiobook link on YouTube, and you can also find the actual play on YouTube, people performing it, and so there's lots of different ways you can stay with us as we read through Antony and Cleopatra, which is Shakespeare's version of a very important part of Roman history, a transition from a republic to an empire under the rule of an emperor who's like a king. So how does Rome do that? Well, an important figure in that is people that are a person that's in your reading this week, Julius Caesar. And I want to talk briefly about why he's so important and what his life does for the Roman Republic. Well, Julius Caesar, born in 100 BC. There's this picture over there on the screen. You can see what he actually looks like. That's kind of rare. We don't know very many people in ancient history what they actually look like, but we do know what Julius Caesar looked like from all of his marble statues that he left behind. He's an important guy, so people put him into marble, and we know what he looks like. It's pretty rare, and it's pretty neat that we know what he looked like. Well, why is he so important? Well, he's important because he's part of this transition period from a republic to an empire. He is a general. He's a fighter, and he fights everywhere. He fights all over the world, but primarily in Gaul, which is, today we would call it France. And he fights with barbarians in Gaul. And he conquers these barbarians. And for 8 long years, he just pushes back the border of Rome, so increasing Roman landholdings. And by doing that, he increases the wealth of Rome. He's bringing so much money into the empire. It's not really actually money. It's more materials that become money, right? So he's getting lumber. He's increasing some of the mines that are in Gaul, so that people can get those precious metals that they use to make weapons and coins and all kinds of jewelry, all those kind of things. He's increasing Roman land, and he's bringing all this wealth back in to Rome. And by doing that, he's incredibly popular with the people. People love him because he's making Rome famous, making Rome rich. But he's not famous among the senators. The senators are getting a little worried about him because he's getting too much power. And one of the reasons he gets too much power is because Rome does something really foolish, and this is important for us to learn. Rome gives too much power to generals, so that generals become very influential. How do they do this? Well, they let generals kind of be like the bosses of their soldiers, so that who paid the soldiers was actually Caesar privately, not the Roman government, but Caesar himself. Out of his own private money, would pay his soldiers. So if you're a soldier, you're more loyal to the person who's paying you than necessarily maybe your country, right? If this is the guy who is in charge of, making you rich and eventually getting your own stuff, well, then you're going to be loyal to Caesar and not necessarily loyal to the country that you're from, the city that you're from, Rome. So Caesar, by winning so much, he's making really loyal soldiers because their soldiers are becoming really rich off of fighting in Gaul. And everybody loves fighting for Julius Caesar because he wins. And in his winning, he also does some pretty nasty things. I want to not gloss over those. What we would consider today probably like a genocide. He kills about 2 million people by his own account in Gaul. And obviously the Romans love this. But today we would think of this as like a genocide. It was not for safety, it was to expand their own territory. He eliminated the people that were living in Gaul pretty brutally. Families, kids, women. He didn't just fight the soldiers. He fought everyone, and he killed everyone that he came in contact with. He fought everywhere. He eventually went into Greece to chase down Pompey. He went to Belgium, Switzerland, England, and Egypt. Traveled all over the world. He served as consul for 1 year, but then when he came back into Rome, he is dictator for 10 years. This is the land that he gave Rome. All the land in green here is land that Caesar added to the Roman Empire. That's pretty impressive. Big chunk of land that that adds to the kingdom of Rome, the empire, or the Republic of Rome at this point. And he's incredibly wealthy. And he comes back to Rome because, well, he's fighting out there for 8-9 years out in those wilds of Gaul. And the Senate says, listen, you got to come back because we're scared you're not going to ever give up your power. So come back and stand for re-election as being in charge of this province of Gaul. And he's like, oh, I don't want to come back by myself. I'm afraid you guys are too jealous, you senators. You realizing that I get more power than you. I'm afraid you might try to do something, maybe even kill me. So he comes back into Rome with his army. This is called the crossing of the Rubicon, where he takes his army, marches back into Rome, and everyone, the senators, are afraid that he's going to become a king. And so they leave Rome. The Senate leaves Rome. They're afraid of Julius Caesar and his army marching back into Rome. You weren't supposed to bring your army back into the city of Rome. That was considered bad manners, illegal. It's not the thing that you should do. But he does it anyways. And he says, this is an important moment. He says, the die is cast. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to march back into Rome with my soldiers. And he comes back in, and Pompey and the senators leave. And they go into exile into Greece. And he chases them down in Greece, and he fights against Pompey, takes on, so it's Rome against a civil war. It's Rome against Rome. And Caesar wins. This is a kind of interesting story where Pompey tries to escape to Egypt. He lands in Egypt, and they cut off his head in Egypt, and they hand it to Julius Caesar when he gets it. He gets into to Egypt, and he's not happy necessarily that he was beheaded. He thought Pompey deserved better than that. He's a Roman citizen after all. Roman citizens deserve good treatment, he thought, but he's now in charge of the whole Roman world. He's the dictator. Remember, dictators were only supposed to be dictators in times of crisis and for only the period of 6 months. But he becomes a dictator for 10 years. And it's more like a king, right? More like I'm in charge and everyone's out. So it goes from being like a triumvirate down to having 2 people in charge. Remember, Crassus dies fighting the Parthians in your readings. Then it's Julius Caesar versus Pompey. All right, I've talked a lot today. I want to not bore you too much. Hopefully you found the readings really exciting. Julius Caesar, an amazing, exciting person. He's going to be assassinated in our readings tomorrow. We're going to find out why he's assassinated. It's because, well, I'll let you find out. We'll talk about it in class tomorrow in our Zoom meeting. So make sure you know about the assassination of Julius Caesar and why the senators want him out. And I'll see you tomorrow, and we'll talk about that. See you guys. Have a good Thursday.